Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. Today we've got another review for you, written by a good friend of the channel, Jace Glover. Thank you very much to you, Jace. This is Langrisser 1 and 2. The Langrisser series of games has a long and storied history dating all the way back to 1991. Whilst the first game was called Langrisser The Descendants of Light in Japan, it was renamed to Warsong for Western releases. Langrisser 2 was released in 1994. And these two games in their original form were released as a compilation package in '98 for the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation, and later added to the PlayStation Network in 2009. Now over a decade since their last release, they are getting the full HD remaster treatment, complete with updated art, music and modernised gameplay. But is it all worth it? Well, thank you to NIS America for the review code, and now let's find out. Langrisser 1 follows the story of a young prince. Right out of the gate, his castle is attacked and his father, the king, orders his strongest knight to save his son, taking him to a nearby town to gather reinforcements. Whilst the young prince does get away to safety, the castle falls to the attacking Dulcis Empire, who steal the game's namesake sword, an ancient relic called Langrisser. Langrisser 2 is not a direct sequel, featuring different characters but existing within the same world. In this one we follow Elwin, a wandering swordsman who is seeking out his instructor's killer alongside his good friend Hein, a mage in training. Similar to the first story, Elwin and Hein immediately find themselves in the midst of war, this time between two factions called the Descendants of Light and the Rhaegar Empire. The stories in both Langrisser 1 and 2 begin fairly straightforward and appear at first glance to be your standard medieval war stories. Yes, some of the characters ride dragons or can cast magic, but other than that, it doesn't seem too far from something like the tale of King Arthur and his knights. However, without spoiling too much, a lot is at play in the world of Langrisser, and it isn't long before gods and demons and the war between order and chaos become the centre point of both games. It makes sense why these two Langrisser titles were made into a combo package, because the gameplay is exactly the same between them. At the start of each title, you will be introduced to a priestess who will ask you questions related to your personality and preferred tactics as a leader. These questions will ultimately determine the starting statistics of your main character, who will then get boosts to certain stats based on your answers. If you don't like the way your answers developed your character, you are given the opportunity to start over. However, once you choose to commit to the character, the game begins for real. At the start of the game and between each battle, you will be taken to a menu screen that shows a map of the land and where the current chapter takes place, marked with your character's icon. From here you are presented with a few options. Pressing the Y button will show you a quick synopsis that adds some flavour and background to the current chapter, and pressing the R button will show you who the next battle is going to be against, and pressing the Y button from this screen shows the layout of the next map. Additionally, you can access the Commanders, Shop, Story Tree and Data submenus. The Commanders menu shows you who is currently on your team and allows you to view each person's class tree, currently known spells, mercenaries you are able to hire, more on this later, and adjust your equipped skills and items. The shop is exactly as it sounds, allowing the purchase and sale of items, with more becoming available as you progress through the story. The story tree allows you to replay previous chapters and see how far along you are in the story or what path you've started down towards the various endings. The combat itself will be immediately familiar to fans of the Fire Emblem or Advance Wars series, and before the battle begins you have the option of choosing which of your commanders start on which spot, as well as the option of hiring mercenaries. Which mercenaries are available to hire is determined by each commander's class tree, with more and stronger units becoming available as each commander levels up and progresses further into the class tree. After this initial setup phase, you will be able to take your first turn. You can individually move each of your controllable characters across the map up to as many spaces as is marked by the unit's move statistic. Should you place yourself close enough to an enemy unit, you can then choose to attack. The tactical side of the gameplay is about knowing when to attack versus when to just defend, keeping in mind terrain advantages and disadvantages, as well as acknowledging strengths and weaknesses of the various units. For example, mounted units have an advantage against common soldiers but a disadvantage against spearmen. An example of considering the terrain is that defending from the top of a wall or elevated area such as a mountain will provide a 20% terrain bonus, but can provide a negative bonus if you are attacking. Another tactical consideration the game provides is that taking out a commander will remove all of the units under that leader from the battlefield. So, do you gun straight for the commander, risking your position, or do you hold a strong defensive stance whilst whittling down the enemy one by one? It's also worth noting that commander characters can cast spells including healing, buff, debuff and attack. However, while any character can move and then use the standard attack option in the same turn, you cannot move and cast a spell in one go. Each battle plays out in this manner, with each side taking turns until either a win or a loss condition is met. The win conditions vary by chapter, which changes up the gameplay nicely. Defeating all enemies is always one option, however, a secondary condition usually includes something like escorting a particular character to a designated spot on the map, or taking out a specific enemy. Loss conditions always include the death of your main character or of another character crucial to that chapter's story. Defeating enemies and completing scenarios grants experience points and CP points. Experience points level up your character, boosting stats each time you reach a new level. CP points are used to move further along the class tree, unlocking stronger units and additional spells and skills. It's worth noting that only the characters that finish off an enemy will receive experience points for the kill, so spreading the experience around is a good idea to keep all of your commanders around the same level. The gameplay overall is extremely fun. There are many battles where I survived by the skin of my teeth, and a couple that I had to try over again because I didn't apply the proper tactics. There were only a few battles I've played so far that felt easy. The only issue I had with the gameplay is that it takes trial and error to determine which units have advantage over others, but this is a minor complaint. Likewise, the controls are exactly what they need to be. Most of the game requires only the use of the A and B buttons to move units around the battlefield or navigate the menus, but there are some shortcuts provided that add to the quality of life, such as pressing X twice to quickly end your turn. The only complaint I can level against the controls is that I had to experiment with them to learn how to end my turn, because there is no tutorial or graphic that I could find at least explaining how to do it. Gameplay receives 18 out of 20, whereas the controls also receive 18 out of 20. The visuals and audio in Langrisser 1 and 2 were both remastered beautifully. The games look and sound like modern titles. The story segments see the main characters blown up to well-drawn and detailed anime-style pictures, but what stands out most to me is that the character sprites look like the full-size version. The maps are bright and colourful, and it's easy to see the different types of terrain, whether it be forests, mountains or castle strongholds. Where the visuals could have been improved is the character design across the two games and the map design across various areas of the world. In regards to the first point, the main character in both games could easily be mistaken for the same person, although each game has an entirely unique cast. For the map design, my complaint is most definitely a minor one, but it would have added that much more world building and flavour if the various towns had unique qualities to them, such as flags specific to each region. In regards to the audio, the music is quite good and is a soundtrack I could see myself listening to outside the game. While there aren't a huge number of different tracks, it never got tiring to listen to for me, even during the longer battles. The characters are voice acted, although it is only in Japanese. To my ear, the voice work was very good, with each character's voice matching their personality and design. The sound effects would be the only downside to the audio, as the battle sounds can get repetitive. Luckily, the volume for the sound effects, background music and voice acting can all be separately adjusted. Additionally, the developers included the option to use the classic art style and the original music instead of the remastered versions, which is definitely a nice touch. Visuals score 17 out of 20, whereas the audio is equally as good and also gets 17 out of 20. Langrisser 1 and 2 will cost you £49.99, €49.99 or $49.99. I know the price can initially seem a little shocking considering the games were originally released in the early 90s, however when comparing them to other recent remakes from that decade like the Final Fantasy games, I can't help but think that this price is worth it. Everything in these games has been remastered from the ground up, and there was clearly a lot of love and care taken in recreating them for the modern gamer. Each game will take you upwards of 30 hours to complete, but trying to unlock the additional endings, 8 in the first game and 13 in the second, can easily add many more to that count. Collectors will be happy to hear that there is also a limited edition available that comes with all sorts of goodies, including a 5 CD soundtrack, an art book and much more. Value scores 16 out of 20. To conclude, Langrisser 1 and 2 is exactly how a remaster should be handled. The original game may be almost 30 years old, but this version looks and sounds great, and the gameplay holds up well to this day. I can wholeheartedly recommend this collection to fans of the genre, and maybe even those who want to try something like this out for the first time, although in that case, perhaps wait for a sale. Langrisser 1 and 2 gets a SwitchUp score of 86%. A huge thank you to Jace as always for a fantastically written review. Thank you of course to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming. 死んでもらおう。